In Chapter 12, we take a look at inventory status records. This is something that tells us when we need to order something. So looking at an inventory status record, and I'm looking at slide 9 at the moment, and I'm going to be working with slide 10, 11, and 12 momentarily. We start with the gross requirements, on-hand inventory, and scheduled receipts for a dense foam for the inner shell of a bicycle helmet are indicated in the time-phased inventory status record on the next slide. Its lead time is 3 weeks. Complete the inventory status record showing when planning orders should be made. Use lot-for-lot ordering. So looking at slide 10, lot-for-lot ordering is you order what you need when you need it, period. Why is this important? Well, if it's something that's going to go bad, become obsolete, deteriorate in how good it is strawberries. Strawberries mold very quickly. You want to keep them as fresh as possible. You don't want to buy strawberries and have them go bad on you, so you want to order them when you're going to be using them. Now, dense foam, you're probably going to be able to keep a little bit longer. It's not going to go bad on you. You need to take a look at how much storage space you have, etc. So right now we're saying we don't have the storage space. We only order what we need when we need it, and we're able to physically do that. So in lot-for-lot ordering, we're ordering what we need. If you notice up into the left-hand corner, this is the old-fashioned way to do it. Again, this is done on the computer now. But you would have X number of time blocks or time buckets. Here we know that our time buckets are in weeks because it says lead time in weeks in this top left corner. It is giving us the raw material that we will be using and the lead time. This is our information corner. And because that's in weeks, I know that each one of these time buckets will also be in weeks. So I'm looking at an 8-week time period here on my desk's phone. Now looking down on this, let's take a look at the left-hand side going down and the information. I'm starting out with gross requirements. Gross requirements are what I plan on using. How much of this dense foam do I plan on using each and every single week? That's the gross requirements. Next, scheduled receipts is how much do I plan on getting in? This is what's going to be delivered during the week, and usually we say at the beginning of the time bucket or beginning of the time period. On hand is the only thing that's listed at the end. How many are left over? This has a number written before the time buckets, and that's that last time period, that last time bucket. In this case, there were 100 left over that we have on hand. We have available to use 100. Next is net requirements. Net requirements is a need. How many do we need? We're going to need to order at some point, and this tells us that we need some. Planned order releases are when we plan to order. How many and when do we plan to place an order? Now, if you place an order, you should receive an order. That only makes sense. So the number that you place, you should be receiving the lead time weeks later, and we'll discuss that as we go along. So looking at our problem here, our dense foam has a lead time of 3 weeks. We're starting with 100 on hand, and I'm going to use the bottom of this page as a scratch paper to begin with. And we can go on, and if I need to move over for more scratch paper, I'll go back over to the smartboard so that we can do our back and forth with this. So let's start with week 1. Week 1, we have on hand 100 units. That's how many was left over. We already have a scheduled receipt of 450 units. That's going to give us a total That's going to give us a total to use of 550 units. I want to subtract out from there how many I plan on using. So I want to subtract out my gross requirements. How many I plan on using for that week. And if I plan on using 125 units, that's going to leave me left 425 units. So at the end of week 1, I'm going to have 425 units left over. You always need to put the number left on hand at the end of the time bucket. There's our week 1. If I look at week 2, let's get rid of the math here and we'll just keep working on the bottom of this page. Let's look at week 2. For week 2, we're looking at the end of week 1. On hand, we had 425 units. Our scheduled receipts are 0. So that gives us a total of 425 units to use. I'm going to subtract out my gross requirements, which is 325, which means I have left 100 units at the end of week 2. So on the on hand at week 2, I'm going to put down 100 units. Moving on to week 3, let's get rid of our math down there and go back to week 3. Week 3, I had left on hand 100 units. I do have a scheduled receipt that I want to add 425 more. Which gives me a total to use of 525 units of our dense foam. I want to subtract out my gross requirements. For week 3, I plan on using 275. That gives me left over 250 units. And again, that's going to go in my on hand. Moving on to week 4. Week 4, I have 250 units left on hand. I want to add my scheduled receipts are 0, so that gives me a total of 250 units to use. In week 4, I plan on having to use 200 units. So I'm going to subtract out my gross requirements of 200, and that leaves me 50 units left. So I have 50 units left over at the end of week 4. Moving right along to week 5. In week 5, I have on hand 50 units with a scheduled receipt of 0, which gives me a total of 50 units to use. But if I look at my gross requirements, I plan on using 300. That means I have negative 250 units. Can you have 250 units in the negative? Not really. It means you're missing units. You plan on using more that you have. That negative signifies a need. In week 5, I have a need of 250 units. I am short units. It's a need. Because I have that need, I need to plan to order them. Remember, this is a planning piece here. What we are doing is looking, our inventory status records helps us plan when we need to order to make sure we have enough on hand. So that's what we're going to be looking at here. So 250 units, I have a lead time of 3 weeks, which means I need to go back 1, 2, 3 weeks to place an order. In lot for lot ordering, we order the number that we need, no more, no less. So I'm going to order 3 weeks in advance, or in week 2, 250 units. Now, if I order in week 2, 3 weeks later, I should get in. So I place this order, it's going to signal a scheduled receipt of 250 units. Why? Because I placed an order for 250 units. If you're placing an order of 250 units, you should get 250 units in. If you do not get 250 units in, check your supplier, something's wrong. So I have my week 5, on what I have already done. I now need to redo week 5. Because I made a change. I've placed an order and I'm getting something in. So I have on hand at the end of week 4, 50 units. I plan on receiving in week 5 now 250 units. That gives me 300 units total that I can use. Out of those 300 units, I'm going to subtract out my gross requirements, which are 300 units, which will leave me with 0 left on hand at the end of week 5. We can now move on to week 6. At the end of week 5, I had left on hand 0. I have scheduled receipts for week 6 of 0, so I have 0 units that I'm able to use. But my gross requirements say I'm going to need 175 units. Again, that gives me a negative number. It signifies that I have a need. I have a need of 175 units in week 6. Tells me I need to place an order. My lead time again is 3 weeks. I'm going to go back 1, 2, 3 weeks and place an order of 175. If I place an order, I better receive that order. The lead time again is 3 weeks, so if I place an order in week 3, in week 6, I should get in an order for 175. Again, if you are placing an order, you better get in the same amount that you've ordered, or you need to check your supplier and possibly get a new supplier. So if I redo now week 6, I had on hand 0 left at the end of week 5, but I have a scheduled receipt now of 175, which gives me 175 to use. I plan my gross requirements using 175, which will leave me 0 on hand at the end of week 6. Moving on to week 7. Week 7, I have on hand 0. I have scheduled receipts of 0 at this time. Gives me a total of 0 to use. My gross requirements say I want to use 350. Gives me a negative. What does that negative mean? It means I have a need for dense foam, units of dense foam, and I need 350 units of the dense foam. I need to go back 3 weeks. 1, 2, 3. That's going to give me week 4. And in week 4, I now need to order 350 units. If I order 350 units in week 4, in week 7, I should be getting the same number of units in. I can now redo week 7. At the end of week 6, I had on hand 0, but I now have a scheduled receipt of 350. So I have a total of 350 units to use. My gross requirements, subtracting them out, 350 units leave me 0 left on hand. At the end of week 7, I will have 0 left on hand. Moving on to week 8. I have on hand 0. Scheduled receipts are also 0, which gives me a total of 0 to use. But I said that my gross requirements are 250. So that means I have a negative number again. What does a negative number mean? It means I have a net requirement. How many units do I need? 250 units. If I need 250 units for week 8, when do I need to get those units? 3 weeks before. 1, 2, 3, which would be week 5. Means I plan on placing an order for 250. If I place an order, I should get them in 3 weeks later, which would be week 8. If I redo week 8, I'm going to take a look. I had on hand 0, a scheduled receipt of 250, which gave me 250 units to use. Subtract out my gross requirements of 250, and it leaves me 0 units at the end. This is lot for lot ordering. It's very basic, very easy. If we move on to getting some reality in ordering, we need to take a look at adding in safety stock. Now, we've already talked about safety stock in Chapter 11. What is safety stock? Safety stock is units that we have on hand for when they're needed. So that if something happens, bad weather, a truck got a flat tire and is just running late, it's okay. We still have stuff that we can produce with. If there's like strawberries. Every now and then you get a rotten strawberry in there. So if we're looking at something like that happening, we're looking at, we have extra on hand to make up for those things that have gone bad, etc. We're working with the dense foam again, and we still have that information up in that left-hand corner. We have the dense foam with a lead time of 3 weeks. But now we have safety stock, SS. And sometimes this is written as a required on hand. It's the exact same thing. Safety stock and required on hand are identical. It's just different people call it different things. So looking at the safety stock of 25, that means on hand, this line can never go below 25. It always has to say there are at least 25 units there. So we need to take that into consideration now as we are going through our problem. So let's start out again with week 1. Taking a look at what we had on hand at the end of our last time bucket, and it was 100. We do have a scheduled receipt in week 1 of 450. This gives us 550 units of the dense foam to work with. We plan on using gross requirements 125. So we subtract that out, it gives us left 425 units on hand. Is 425 bigger than 25 units? The last time I did math, it was. So we're good. We can say we have 425 units left on hand at the end of week 1. Moving along to week 2. At the end of week 1, we had 425 units on hand. We had a scheduled receipt of 0 for week 2. So our total is 425 units that we have available to use during week 2. On week 2, our gross requirements, what we plan on using, is 325 units. This gives us left over 100 units. Again, check, is 100 greater than 25? The math that I use it is. So we're good to go for week 2 in our planning with 100 units left at the end of week 2. Moving on to week 3. We have on hand in week 3, at the end of week 2, 100 units. We do have a scheduled receipt of 450 units. That gives us a total of 550 units to use. In week 3, we plan on using our gross requirements of 275. This gives us left over 275 units. Again, is that bigger than our 25 safety stock? Yes, it is. So again, we are good to go. The end of week 3 left on hand is 275 units. Moving along to week 4. In week 4, we had left on hand at the end of week 3, 275 units. We have no scheduled receipts. which means we have 275 units available to use. In week 4, want to subtract out our gross requirements, what we plan on using, which is 200, which leaves us 75. Looking at this, 75 units, is that greater than our needed safety stock of 25? Yes. So week 4 is good to go with 75 units left on hand at the end of the week. Week 5. We are looking at week 5, where we have 75 units on hand at the end of week 4. At this point in time, we have no scheduled receipts, which means we have 75 units we can use. Our gross requirements, what we plan on using though, is 300 units. That means we have a negative 225 units. Now, what did we say a negative was when we did the lot for lot ordering before? We said that that negative was that we have a need. We're short the number of units we need to produce what we need to produce. We're short 225 units, but we need to take into consideration our safety stock of another 25 units that have to be left on hand. So we're actually short 250 units. So in week 5, we have a need for 250 units. We have a need in week 5 of 250 units. Our lead time that I covered up there, our lead time is still 3 weeks. So we need to order 3 weeks in advance, 1, 2, 3 weeks in advance, that's week 2, 250 units. If I order 250 units in week 2, I'm assuming I'm going to get them in 3 weeks later, which would be week 5, or I'm going to have a scheduled receipt of 250 units. If I now redo week 5, I had on hand 75 units, a scheduled receipt of 250. That gives me 325 units to be able to use. I want to subtract out my gross requirements of 300, and that leaves me with 25 units left over. Does that 25 units satisfy our safety stock? Yes, it does, because our safety stock has to be 25 units. So the end of week 5, we're going to have 25 units. Moving along to week 6. Week 6 said that we had on hand left over at the end of week 5, 25 units. At this time, no scheduled receipts. So we have 25 units that we can use. We have gross requirements, what we plan on using in week 6 of 175. That means I'm short 150 units. But am I short 150 units? Now I have to take into consideration my safety stock. So subtract out another 25 and I'm actually short 175 units, which means my net requirements for week 6 are 175. My net requirement says I'm going to need to plan an order. Because of my lead time being 3 weeks, I better order 3 weeks in advance, or in week 3, order 175 units. If I order 175 units in week 3, when will I get them in? 3 weeks later. In week 6, I should get in 175 units. If not, check your supplier, something's wrong. If I redo week 6 now, I had on hand at the end of week 5, 25 units. I have a scheduled receipt of 175, which gives me 200 units. I plan on using 175, subtract out your gross requirements there, and that leaves me 25 units left over. Does that satisfy my safety stock? Sure does, because my safety stock has to be 25 units. Moving right along to week 7. We are looking at having on hand at the end of week 6, 25 units. My scheduled receipt right now is 0. That gives me 25 units total to use. My gross requirements, what I plan on using though, is 350 units. That means I'm short 325 units. But is that really true? No, because I have to take into consideration my safety stock. So I need to subtract out 25 more units. So I'm actually short 350 units. What does that signify? It's a need or a net requirement of 350 units. If I'm going to need in week 7 350 units, I need to plan to order them in advance. There's that 3-week lead time. So if I order this in advance, 3 weeks in advance would be week 4. I'm going to order 350 units. If I order 350 units in week 4, I need to plan on getting them in or schedule my receipt of those units. So in week 7, I now have a scheduled receipt of 350 units. So let's redo our math for week 7 now. In week 7, we had on hand at the end of week 6, 25 units, and we have a scheduled receipt of 350 units. That gives us 375 units. Subtracting out our gross requirements, what we plan on using is 350 units, which leaves us 25 units. Is that okay? For our safety stock, it covers our safety stock. Our safety stock is 25 units. So at the end of week 7, we will have 25 units. Looking at the last time bucket or time block on this inventory status record is week 8. And we are looking at the end of week 7 on hand of 25 units and a scheduled receipt in week 8 at this point of 0. That gives us 25 units to use. But our gross requirements that we need to subtract out are 250. That means we are actually short 225. But is that true? No, remember that safety stock. We need to subtract out those 25 units, which means we're short 250 units. Where do we write that? What does that tell us? That net requirement is 250 units. If we have a net requirement of 250 units, we have to plan to order this. When do we plan on ordering it? Look at our lead time, 3 weeks in advance. We order 250 units then in week 5. If we order in week 5, we should get in 3 weeks later. Our scheduled receipt in week 8 of 250 units. Let's redo week 8. We start with on hand at the end of week 7, 25 units. Add in our scheduled receipts of 250. That gives us 275. Subtract out our gross requirements of 250, and that leaves us 25 units left over. So at the end of week 5, we are looking, end of week 8, we are looking at having 25 units left over. This is starting getting reality. in ordering in our inventory status records, but it's literally just the tip of the iceberg. We're looking at reality in ordering, and we're really looking at reality-based here, folks. More information. Looking again up at this left-hand corner of this inventory status report, the dense foam again, still have a lead time of 3 weeks. We're still looking at safety stock in 25 units, but now we have a minimum order size of 400 units. You cannot ever order less than 400 units. That's the minimum amount you can ever order. It doesn't matter how many you need. If you place an order, the minimum must be 400 units. Then there's a lot size after the minimum. After 400 units, you can order it lots of 50. That means you order 400, 450, 500, 550 units. We're looking at, you can never order 522 units. It has to be in the lot size, the minimum order 400, and then the lot size after that, what you need. So let's take a look again, just like what we've been doing, but now taking into consideration this minimum order and this lot size after our minimum. So if we take a look at week 1, we're taking a look that we have on hand 100 units. We do have a scheduled receipt planned of 450 units, which is going to give us 550 units. We plan on using gross requirements 125 units this week. And if I do my math right, that leaves 425 units. Is 425 greater than 25? Sure is. Therefore, we can say that left on hand at the end of week 1 will be 425 units. Looking at week 2. In week 2, we find that we have left on hand from the end of week 1, 425 units with no scheduled receipts. So we have 425 units to use. What's our gross requirements for the week? 325 units, which will leave us 100 units left on hand. Does that 100 units satisfy our safety stock of 25? Yes, 100 is greater than 25, therefore we are able to say at the end of week 2 we will have 100 units left. If we look at week 3, we have on hand at the end of week 2 100 units with a scheduled receipt in week 3 of 450 units. That gives us 550 units to use. How many do we plan on using? 275 units. Those are our gross requirements. That leaves us 275 units left over. Does that satisfy our safety stock? Sure does. So 275 units are left on hand. Moving on to week 4. We had on hand at the end of week 3, 275 units to be able to use in week 4. Scheduled receipts are 0, so that gives us a total of 275 units available to use in week 4. What's your gross requirements? How many do you plan on using? 200 units. That leaves us 75 units. Does that satisfy our safety stock? Minimum required on hand. How much do you have to have on hand? At least 25 units. This says we'll have 75 units. Last time I checked, 75 was greater than 25, so we're okay there. Moving on to week 5. We had left on hand 75 units at the end of week 4 with no scheduled receipts at this time, which gave us a total of 75 units to be able to be used. But what's our gross requirements that we need to subtract out? How many do we plan on using? 300 units. That means we're short 225 units. Oh, but wait a minute. Remember that safety stock. Let's subtract out to make sure that we cover that. And that will give us 250 units that we're short. So remember we said on that last slide that it's our net requirements, we're short 250 units. It's a need. We have a need for 250 units during week 5. Can you order 250 units though? No. Remember, our minimum order is 400 units. So if we go back our lead time 3 weeks, 1, 2, 3, in week 2, we're going to order 400 units, not 250 that we actually need, but that minimum order size of 400 units, which is greater than the amount that we need. So if we order 400 units, that planned order release, in week 2, 3 weeks later, week 5, we should get in 400 units. If you're not getting in the same amount that you're ordering, check your supplier. Something's wrong. So if we redo the math on week 5, we had on hand 75 units at the end of week 4. We now have a scheduled receipt planned of 400 units, which gives us 475 units. And we plan on using 300 of them, which leaves us with 175 left over. Is 175 greater than 25? We're okay with our safety stock there? Yes. So if we look now to week 6, we have 175 on hand, a scheduled receipt of 0, which gives us 175. What's our gross requirements? 175. That leaves us 0. But wait a minute, what about that safety stock? Let's subtract that out. And we find that we are short. We actually have a need of 25. Can you order 25? No, you can't. What's the middle number you have to order? 400. So in week 3, we should plan on ordering 400 units to be able to get that in week 6 so that we have enough to use here of the dense foam. So if we redo week 6, we had on hand 175. We now have a scheduled receipt of 400. That gives us 575 minus 175 that we're going to use, which leaves us 400 left over. Is 400 greater than 25, satisfying our safety stock? Sure is. So we're good to go there. Moving on to week 7. We had on hand at the end of week 6, 400 units. Let's erase that and write that over again. I apologize. So at the end of week 6, we have on hand 400 units. We don't have any scheduled receipts at this time. That gives us 400 units to be able to use. We need to figure out how many we need for this week. Our gross requirements are 350. So if we subtract those out to what we have, what we plan on having, and what we plan on using, that leaves us 50 units. Does that satisfy our safety stock? What's our safety stock? 25 units. So yes, that does satisfy our safety stock. Looking at week 8, the last time bucket here. At the end of week 7, we have on hand 50 units. We have no scheduled receipts, which leaves us 50 units. How many do we plan on using? 250, which means we're short 200 units. Ooh, but take into consideration your safety stock, which means we're actually short 225 units. That signifies our need or a net requirement of 225 units. Can you order 225 units? Nope. You have to order minimum order of 400 units, remember? 400 is bigger than 225. 3 weeks in advance due to a 3-week lead time. So 400 units will need to be ordered in week 5. If you order them in week 5, plan on getting them in week 8. So redo week 8. We had on hand 50. We have scheduled receipts of 400. That gives us 450. How many do we plan on using? Our gross requirements, 250. That leaves us 200 left on hand. Does that satisfy our safety stock at the end of this time bucket? Sure does, because it only needs to be 25 units. That gives us a little bit more reality in ordering and ends on what we're going to do here. Now, there's a lot more information here, folks. You have to take into consideration when plants will be closed and how you have to change what's what here. You might know that your plant's going to be closed the week of between Christmas and New Year's. So you have to order appropriately to have in after New Year's before Christmas. If your supplier is closed the week of 4th of July and you're not, you have to vary how you're going to order things. So there's other things, reality, that has to be taken into consideration, but this gives us a basic idea of what's going on. Now, your book did do the lot for lot ordering. I bring in this other reality with safety stock, minimum order size, and then lot size after minimum.